The phone buzzed at exactly 5:30 in the morning, jolting Maria from the few precious minutes of sleep she had managed to grab. Her heart sank the moment she saw Mrs. Chen's name on the screen. She already knew what this call meant before she even answered. "Maria, I'm so sorry, but my grandson just got rushed to the hospital." Mrs. Chen's worried voice crackled through the speaker. "I can't watch Sophia tonight. My daughter needs me to drive her to the emergency room right now." Maria felt her stomach drop to the floor. She sat up in her tiny one-bedroom apartment, looking over at 8-month-old Sophia sleeping peacefully in her crib by the window. The morning light was just starting to filter through the thin curtains, casting gentle shadows across her daughter's chubby cheeks. "Is he going to be okay?" Maria asked, genuinely concerned for the little boy she had met several times when dropping Sophia off. "We don't know yet. He's had a high fever all night. I'm really sorry about the short notice, sweetie. I know how much you need this." Maria closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Don't worry about it, Mrs. Chen. Family comes first. I hope everything works out." After hanging up, Maria immediately scrolled through her contacts, her fingers moving frantically across the screen. Mrs. Rodriguez down the hall. No answer. Her neighbor Jessica, straight to voicemail. The backup daycare center. Closed for renovations this week. One by one, every option disappeared like dominoes falling in slow motion. She looked at the clock on her phone. 5:45 a.m. She needed to be at Pinnacle Industries by 6 p.m. for her night shift, and here she was, 12 hours away from work with no childcare and no solutions in sight. Maria walked to the kitchen and started making coffee with shaking hands. The small apartment felt even smaller today, with bills scattered across the kitchen table and Sophia's toys covering most of the living room floor. The eviction notice tucked under a stack of other papers seemed to stare at her accusingly. She had worked so hard to get this job at Pinnacle Industries. The pay wasn't much, barely enough to cover rent, groceries, and Sophia's basic needs, but it was steady work with a reliable schedule. Most importantly, it was a job she could do while Sophia slept, which meant she didn't need expensive daytime childcare. But Maria had already used up most of her goodwill at work. Last month, when Sophia had been sick with an ear infection, she had missed 2 shifts. Her supervisor, Mr. Peterson, had been understanding but firm. "I get it, Maria, I really do. But this is a business and we need people we can count on. One more unexcused absence and we'll have to let you go." The memory of that conversation made her chest tight with anxiety. She couldn't lose this job. Without it, she and Sophia would end up homeless within a month. The thought of her baby sleeping in a car or a shelter made Maria feel physically sick. She picked up her phone again and started calling everyone she could think of. Her sister in Phoenix, too far away. Her old college roommate, hadn't spoken in 2 years. The church daycare, only open during weekday hours. Every call ended the same way. "Sorry, can't help, wish we could do something." By noon, Maria was pacing the apartment like a caged animal. Sophia had woken up and was happily playing with her favorite stuffed elephant, completely unaware of the crisis unfolding around her. Maria watched her daughter's innocent smile and felt a mix of overwhelming love and crushing responsibility. "What are we going to do, baby girl?" she whispered, picking Sophia up and holding her close. Sophia giggled and grabbed at Maria's hair, her tiny fingers surprisingly strong. As the afternoon wore on, a crazy idea started forming in Maria's mind. She pushed it away at first, knowing how risky it would be. But as 4 p.m. approached and she still had no other options, the idea grew stronger and more tempting. What if she brought Sophia to work with her? The thought made her heart race. Pinnacle Industries had strict security policies. No unauthorized personnel allowed in the building after hours. She had signed multiple forms acknowledging this when she was hired. Getting caught would mean immediate termination and probably being blacklisted from other cleaning companies in the city. But Maria had been working there for 8 months now. She knew the building layout perfectly. She knew which floors would be completely empty during her shift and which ones might have late working executives. She knew where the security cameras were and, more importantly, where they weren't. The executive floors were always deserted by the time her shift started at 6 p.m. The only people who occasionally stayed late were a few workaholics on the lower floors, and she could easily avoid those areas until later in her shift. Maria looked at Sophia, who was now contentedly chewing on her elephant's ear. She was such a good baby. She rarely cried and usually slept through the night. If Maria could keep her quiet and hidden, Maybe she could pull this off just once, just until she figured out a permanent solution. The more she thought about it, the more it seemed possible. She could set up a little nest for Sophia in her cleaning cart, surrounded by soft towels and blankets. She could work efficiently and quietly, staying in the empty areas of the building. If Sophia needed feeding or changing, she could duck into a bathroom or empty office. It was completely crazy. It was dangerous and could ruin everything she had worked for. But looking around her tiny apartment at the overdue bills and the eviction notice, Maria realized she was already at risk of losing everything anyway. By 5 p.m., her decision was made. She packed Sophia's diaper bag with extra care, including enough bottles, diapers, and quiet toys to last through the night. She chose Sophia's softest pajamas and wrapped her favorite blanket around her. "We're going on an adventure tonight, sweetheart," Maria whispered as she bundled Sophia into her car seat. "Mama needs you to be extra good, okay?" As she drove toward the towering Pinnacle Industries building, Maria's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had never been so scared in her life, but she had also never been so determined. For Sophia, she would risk anything. The building's glass walls reflected the evening sky as she pulled into the employee parking garage. Taking one last deep breath, Maria gathered her courage, picked up her daughter, and stepped into the unknown. The security guard barely looked up as Maria badged into the building. She had seen him dozens of times before. A kind older man named Tony, who usually spent his evening shift reading paperback novels and drinking coffee from a thermos. Tonight, thankfully, he was deep into what looked like a mystery novel, and just gave her a friendly nod. Maria pushed her cleaning cart toward the service elevator, her heart pounding so loud she was sure everyone in the lobby could hear it. Sophia was hidden inside the cart's large bottom compartment, nestled between soft towels and blankets like a little bird in a nest. Maria had practiced this setup 3 times at home, making sure Sophia would be comfortable and invisible. As the elevator climbed to the 20th floor, Maria whispered quietly to the cart, "You're being so good, baby girl. Just a few more hours and we'll be home." A tiny coo came from inside the cart, followed by the soft sound of Sophia playing with her favorite rattle. Maria smiled despite her nerves. So far, so good. The 20th floor was always her first stop, mostly accounting offices that emptied out by 5 o'clock sharp. Maria had memorized everyone's routine over the past 8 months. She knew that Mr. Williams in corner office always left his coffee mug on the windowsill, and that the lady in the blue cubicle collected ceramic frogs that needed careful dusting. Maria worked with practiced efficiency, moving from office to office while keeping one eye on her cart. Every few minutes she would peek inside to check on Sophia, who seemed fascinated by the gentle rocking motion as the cart rolled across the carpeted floors. "This isn't so bad," Maria thought to herself as she finished the 20th floor without any problems. Sophia had dozed off during the last few offices, lulled to sleep by the quiet hum of the vacuum cleaner. The 21st floor went just as smoothly. Then the 22nd. By the time Maria reached the 25th floor, she was starting to feel a tiny bit of confidence. Maybe this crazy plan was actually going to work. That confidence lasted exactly 12 more minutes. As Maria was emptying trash cans in the 26th floor conference room, Sophia woke up hungry. The soft whimpering started quietly, barely audible over the building's ventilation system. But Maria knew that sound meant trouble was coming fast. She quickly pushed the cart into an empty office and lifted Sophia out, trying to soothe her before the whimpering turned into full crying. Sophia's little face was scrunched up, and Maria could tell she was working up to a really big wail. "Shh, shh, it's okay, sweetheart," Maria whispered, pulling a bottle from the diaper bag. "Mama's got your milk right here." But Sophia was past the point of easy comfort. She arched her back and let out a cry that seemed to echo through the empty office. Maria bounced her gently, trying every trick she knew to calm her down. But Sophia was having none of it. That's when Maria heard the elevator ding. Her blood turned to ice. The elevator was at the other end of the floor, but in the quiet building every sound traveled. Maria heard footsteps, confident, purposeful footsteps walking down the hallway in her direction. Panic flooded through Maria's body. She looked around frantically for somewhere to hide, but the office was mostly empty except for a desk and a few chairs. The footsteps were getting closer and Sophia was still crying. Without thinking, Maria dove under the large oak desk, pulling Sophia close to her chest and trying to make herself as small as possible. She covered Sophia's mouth gently with her hand, not to hurt her but just to muffle the sound. The footsteps stopped right outside the office. Maria held her breath, her heart beating so fast she thought it might burst. She could see expensive leather shoes through the gap under the desk, definitely not the sneakers that the other cleaning crew wore. This was someone important, someone who could fire her on the spot. Sophia squirmed against her mother's chest, still upset but thankfully quieter now. Maria silently prayed to every saint she could remember from her childhood, begging for just this one miracle. The shoes moved away from the doorway. Maria heard them continue down the hall, getting fainter and fainter until they disappeared completely. She stayed frozen under the desk for what felt like hours but was probably only 5 minutes, waiting to make sure whoever it was had really gone. When she finally crawled out from under the desk, her legs were shaking so badly she could barely stand. Sophia had calmed down and was now looking up at her with those big brown eyes that always made Maria melt. "We almost got caught, didn't we, baby?" Maria whispered, finally giving Sophia the bottle she had been crying for. Mama's heart almost stopped. The rest of the 26th floor took twice as long as usual because Maria jumped at every tiny sound. The air conditioning cycling on made her freeze in place. A phone ringing in someone's office 3 doors down made her grab Sophia protectively. By the time she finished that floor, her nerves were completely frayed. But the night was far from over. Maria still had 14 more floors to clean, including the most dangerous ones, the executive floors at the top of the building. The 27th through 35th floors went relatively smoothly. Though Maria's anxiety never fully went away, Sophia seemed to sense her mother's stress and was more restless than usual. She fussed every time Maria put her back in the cart, and keeping her quiet required constant attention. By the time Maria reached the 36th floor, it was almost 10:30 p.m. Sophia needed a diaper change, and Maria was exhausted from the constant stress of listening for footsteps and hiding whenever she heard the slightest sound. She found an empty bathroom and laid out Sophia's changing pad on the counter. As she was fastening the new diaper, Sophia suddenly broke into a huge smile and started babbling happily, as if this whole adventure was the most fun she'd ever had. "You think this is a game, don't you?" Maria said, unable to help smiling back despite everything. "You have no idea how scared Mama is right now." But Sophia's joy was infectious, and for just a moment, Maria felt some of her tension ease. Maybe they really could pull this off. Just a few more floors and they would be home free. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. The 37th floor was where everything started to fall apart. Sophia had been too quiet for too long, and Maria should have known that meant trouble was brewing. As she was vacuuming the main hallway, Sophia woke up from her nap in the worst possible way. The crying started suddenly and loudly, echoing through the empty corridors like a fire alarm. Maria rushed to the cart, but Sophia was beyond consoling now. She was tired, overstimulated, and probably picking up on all the stress Maria had been carrying around all evening. Maria tried everything: rocking, bouncing, singing quietly, offering another bottle. Nothing worked. Sophia's cries got louder and more desperate, and Maria felt panic rising in her chest like floodwater. That's when she heard it again. The elevator ding that had become the soundtrack to her nightmares. But this time, the footsteps that followed were heading straight toward the 38th floor. The executive floor, the floor where the most important people in the company worked, including the CEO himself. Maria grabbed Sophia and her supplies, abandoning the cart in the hallway as she ran toward the stairwell. She had to get away from those footsteps, away from whoever was coming up to investigate the crying baby that definitely shouldn't exist in this building. As she pushed through the stairwell door with Sophia still wailing in her arms, Maria realized that her carefully planned night of secret cleaning was about to become a disaster that would change everything. The stairwell was cold and echoed with Sophia's cries like a concrete canyon. Maria's hands were shaking as she bounced her daughter, trying desperately to calm her down while listening for footsteps in the hallway she had just fled from. "Please, baby, please stop crying," Maria whispered, tears starting to form in her own eyes. "We're in so much trouble if someone finds us." But Sophia was beyond reason now. She had been such a good baby all evening, sleeping peacefully and staying quiet during the most dangerous moments. Now it seemed like all that stored-up energy was coming out at once, and nothing Maria did seemed to help. Maria looked at her phone. 11:30 p.m. She still had 3 floors left to clean, including the 38th floor where the CEO and other top executives had their offices. But with Sophia crying like this, there was no way she could continue working. She needed to find somewhere private where she could try to calm her daughter down. The break room. There was a small employee break room on the 38th floor that was always empty during night shifts. Maria had cleaned it hundreds of times and knew it had a comfortable chair and a small sink where she could warm up Sophia's bottle properly. Maria climbed the stairs slowly, Sophia's cries echoing off the walls. By the time she reached the 38th floor, Sophia had worn herself out enough that her wails had turned into tired whimpering. Maybe there was still hope. The break room was dark and quiet, exactly as Maria had expected. She flicked on the lights and immediately felt a little bit safer. This room was tucked away at the end of the hallway, far from the main offices. Even if someone was working late, they probably wouldn't come all the way back here. Maria sat down in the comfortable chair and tried to give Sophia another bottle, but the baby pushed it away with her tiny hands. She was overtired now, that cranky state that every parent knows means bedtime is long overdue. "I know, sweetheart, I know," Maria said softly, rocking Sophia back and forth. "This isn't your usual bedtime routine, is it? Mama messed everything up tonight." Maria felt the weight of her situation settling on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. Even if she managed to get Sophia calmed down, how was she going to explain the abandoned cleaning cart in the hallway? How was she going to finish her work when Sophia clearly needed to be home in her own crib? For the first time all evening, Maria allowed herself to cry. Quiet tears rolled down her cheeks as she held her daughter, feeling like the worst mother in the world for putting Sophia through this scary, confusing night. That's when she heard the footsteps. They were different from the ones she had heard earlier. These were slower, more deliberate, and they were definitely getting closer to the break room. Maria's stomach dropped as she realized she had made a terrible mistake. The lights. She had turned on the lights, which meant anyone walking down the hallway would know someone was in here. The footsteps stopped right outside the break room door. Maria held her breath, hoping whoever it was would just keep walking. Maybe they would assume someone had forgotten to turn off the lights. Maybe they wouldn't bother to check inside. But then the door handle turned. Maria's entire body went cold as a tall man in an expensive suit stepped into the break room. She recognized him immediately from the company photos in the lobby and the occasional glimpses she had caught of him during her 8 months of working here. This was the CEO himself, the man who owned this entire building and probably had the power to have her arrested for trespassing. For a moment, they just stared at each other in complete silence. Sophia had stopped crying and was looking up at the strange new person with curious baby eyes. The CEO looked shocked, as if finding a cleaning lady with a baby in his break room at almost midnight was the last thing he had expected. Maria's mind went completely blank. All the explanations she might have prepared, all the excuses she could have made disappeared like smoke. She could only stare at this powerful man in his perfect suit and wait for him to call security. I'm so sorry," Maria finally stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can explain. Please don't call the police." The CEO didn't say anything right away. He was looking at Sophia, who had chosen this moment to give him one of her biggest, most charming baby smiles. Sophia was always friendly with new people, but Maria had never been more terrified of her daughter's social nature. "Please," Maria continued, tears flowing freely now. "I know I shouldn't be here with her. I know it's against all the rules, but I had no choice. My babysitter canceled at the last minute, and I couldn't afford to miss work again. I already got written up last month, and if I missed tonight, I would lose my job." The words came pouring out of her like water from a broken dam. Maria told him about the eviction notice, about the bills piled up on her kitchen table, about how she was barely keeping her head above water even with this job. She told him about Mrs. Chen's grandson in the hospital, and how every backup plan had fallen through. "I know it was stupid and reckless," Maria said, holding Sophia closer to her chest. "I know I probably ruined everything, but I didn't know what else to do. This job is all I have. Without it, Sophia and I will be living in my car by next month." The CEO listened to all of this without interrupting. His expression was impossible to read, which made Maria even more nervous. She had expected anger, maybe even shouting, This quiet attention was somehow worse. "I'll pack up right now and leave," Maria said, starting to stand up. "I won't cause any more trouble. You don't have to call security or anything. I'll just go." "Wait," the CEO said, and his voice was much gentler than Maria had expected. "What's her name?" Maria blinked in confusion. "What? Your daughter? What's her name?" "Sophia," Maria said quietly, not sure where this was going. "Her name is Sophia." The CEO took a step closer and Maria instinctively tensed up. But instead of reaching for his phone to call security, he did something completely unexpected. He smiled. "She's beautiful," he said, and there was something in his voice that Maria couldn't quite identify. "How old is she?" 8 months, Maria answered, still confused by this turn in the conversation. Shouldn't he be furious? Shouldn't he be having her arrested for bringing an unauthorized person into a secure building? "May I?" the CEO asked, extending his arm slightly toward Sophia. Maria stared at him in complete shock. The most powerful person in the company, a man who probably made more money in a week than she made in a year, was asking if he could hold her baby. Maria looked down at Sophia, who was still smiling at this new person like he was an old friend. Against every instinct telling her this was a bad idea, Maria found herself nodding. The CEO took Sophia gently in his arms, and something amazing happened. Sophia, who had been crying and fussing for the past hour, immediately settled down. She looked up at him with those big brown eyes and reached up to touch his tie with her tiny fingers. "Hello, Sophia," he said softly. "You've had quite an adventure tonight, haven't you?" Maria watched in amazement as her daughter, who usually took time to warm up to strangers, seemed completely comfortable with this man. It was as if some invisible connection had formed between them in that moment. The CEO looked up at Maria, and she saw something in his eyes she had never expected to see from someone so wealthy and powerful. It looked almost like sadness mixed with something else she couldn't quite name. "Tell me," he said, still holding Sophia. "What do you want for her future?" Maria blinked, not understanding the question. "I'm sorry?" "For Sophia, what are your dreams for her? What kind of life do you want her to have?" And in that moment, standing in the break room at nearly midnight with her daughter in the arms of a millionaire, Maria realized that everything she thought she knew about this night was about to change. Maria stared at the CEO, completely confused by his question. What did he mean? What did she want for Sophia's future? Wasn't he about to fire her and call security? Wasn't this the part where everything fell apart? I want her to have opportunities, Maria said slowly, watching as Sophia played with the man's expensive tie. "I want her to go to college someday. I want her to never have to worry about where her next meal is coming from or whether we can pay the rent." The CEO nodded thoughtfully, bouncing Sophia gently in his arms. She had completely relaxed against him, as if she had known him her whole life. It was the strangest thing Maria had ever seen. "I want her to believe she can be anything she wants to be," Maria continued, feeling braver now that he seemed genuinely interested in her answer. "I want her to have choices that I never had. What about you?" he asked. "What do you want for yourself?" Maria was quiet for a long moment. No one had asked her that question in years. Since Sophia was born, everything had been about survival, about making it through each day and each month. Dreams felt like luxuries she couldn't afford. "I was studying business before Sophia came along," she admitted. "I had to drop out when she was born because I couldn't afford both school and childcare. I've been trying to take online classes when I can, but it's hard to find time between work and taking care of her." The CEO walked over to one of the chairs and sat down, still holding Sophia. Maria noticed that his expensive suit was now covered in baby drool, but he didn't seem to care at all. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maria Rodriguez," she answered. "Maria, I'm going to tell you something that I've never told any of my employees," he said, his voice becoming quieter. "Something I don't talk about with anyone anymore." Maria sat down across from him, sensing that something important was about to happen. "5 years ago, I had a daughter," he began, looking down at Sophia with an expression Maria couldn't quite read. "Her name was Lucy, and she would have been about 5 years old now." Maria's heart skipped a beat. "Would have been?" "She was the light of my life," he continued. "Everything I did, every decision I made was for her. My wife and I had so many plans. We were going to travel the world together as a family. We were going to teach her how to ride bikes and help her with homework and watch her graduate from college. His voice got quieter, and Maria realized he was fighting back tears. One night we were driving home from dinner. It was raining and another driver ran a red light. The car hit us on Lucy's side. He paused, taking a shaky breath. She died instantly. My wife was in the hospital for 3 months, and when she finally recovered, she couldn't bear to be around me anymore. Everything reminded her of what we lost. Maria felt tears welling up in her own eyes. She had never imagined that this powerful, successful man had experienced such heartbreak. I buried myself in work after that, he said. It was the only thing that kept me from falling apart completely. I've spent the last 5 years building this company bigger and bigger, thinking that somehow success would fill the hole in my life. But nothing has worked. He looked up at Maria, and she saw pain in his eyes that she recognized. It was the same kind of pain she felt every time she worried about not being able to provide for Sophia. Until tonight, he said softly. When I heard crying coming from this floor, I was annoyed. I thought maybe someone had left a television on or something. I never expected to find a mother working her heart out to take care of her child. Sophia chose that moment to reach up and pat his cheek with her tiny hand, as if she understood that he was sad and wanted to comfort him. The CEO smiled through his tears. She reminds me so much of Lucy, he said, the way she looks at everything with such curiosity and trust. The way she seems to know exactly what people need. Maria didn't know what to say. This whole night had taken such an unexpected turn that she felt like she was in a dream. You know what I realized when I saw you hiding under that desk earlier? He asked. Maria's eyes widened. You saw me? I saw your shoes sticking out, he said with a slight smile. I was going to investigate, but then I heard the baby crying and I figured whoever it was would come out eventually. I had no idea it was my hardest working employee risking everything just to keep her job. He stood up and walked to the window, still holding Sophia. The city lights stretched out below them, twinkling like stars. I've been so focused on my own grief that I forgot what it means to fight for someone you love, he said. Watching you tonight reminded me of something I lost when Lucy died. He reminded me what real courage looks like. Maria wiped her eyes, overwhelmed by everything she was hearing. I've made a decision, he said, turning back to face her. Actually, I've made several decisions. Maria's heart started beating faster. Was this the part where he fired her after all? First, you're not in trouble. You're not getting fired, and I'm not calling security. What you did tonight was dangerous and against policy. But it was also the most incredible act of dedication I've seen from any employee in my 20 years of running companies. Maria felt like she might faint from relief. Second, I want to offer you a different position. We have an opening in our business development department. It's entry-level, but it comes with full benefits, including health insurance and a retirement plan. The pay is 3 times what you're making now. Maria stared at him in shock. I don't have a degree. I only finished 2 years of business school. We'll work on that, he said. The company has a tuition assistance program. We'll pay for you to finish your education while you work during the day. But what about Sophia? Maria asked, the practical part of her mind starting to work through the logistics. I can't afford daycare on any salary, and I can't bring her to work every day. The CEO smiled, and it was the first genuinely happy expression Maria had seen on his face all night. That's the third thing, he said. I've been thinking about this building, about all the empty space we have. We could easily convert one of the unused offices into a child care center for employees' children. Professional child care right here in the building. Maria felt like the room was spinning. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. There are other employees here who struggle with child care costs. Single parents, young families just starting out. Why shouldn't this company help its people balance work and family life? He walked back over and gently placed Sophia in Maria's arms. She looked up at her mother with those big brown eyes, as if she knew something wonderful was happening. I have one condition, though, he said. Maria's heart sank. Of course there was a catch. This had all sounded too good to be true. I want you to let me be part of Sophia's life, he said quietly. Not in any official way, and only if you're comfortable with it. But I'd like to watch her grow up. I'd like to be someone she can count on. Maria looked down at her daughter, then back at this man who had just offered to change their entire future. Why? She asked. Why would you do all this for us? Because, he said, his voice thick with emotion, you showed me something tonight that I thought I'd lost forever. You showed me what it means to love someone so much that you'd risk everything for them, and Sophia. She gave me something I never thought I'd feel again. What's that? Maria whispered. Hope, he said simply. She gave me hope. The phone call came at 8:30 the next morning, just as Maria was trying to convince herself that the previous night had been some kind of incredible dream. Sophia was playing happily on the living room floor, completely unaware that her mother had barely slept all night thinking about everything that had happened. Maria, this is Janet from Human Resources at Pinnacle Industries, the voice on the phone said. Mr. Mitchell asked me to call you this morning about a position that's opened up in our company. Maria's hands started shaking. So it had been real. The CEO had actually meant what he said about the job offer. I know this is short notice, Janet continued, but would you be able to come in for an interview this afternoon? Mr. Mitchell is very excited to discuss this opportunity with you. Maria looked around her tiny apartment at the pile of bills on the table and the eviction notice that was still tucked under a stack of papers. Yes, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I can be there. Wonderful. Come to the executive floor at 2 p.m. And Maria? Mr. Mitchell asked me to tell you to bring Sophia if you need to. By 1:45 that afternoon, Maria was standing outside the Pinnacle Industries building in her best interview outfit, which was really just her nicest pair of jeans and a blouse she had bought at a thrift store 2 years ago. Sophia was dressed in her prettiest pink dress, the one Maria had been saving for special occasions. The ride up to the 38th floor felt completely different in daylight. Instead of sneaking around in the shadows, Maria was walking through the front door as an invited guest. The elevator seemed to climb forever, giving her plenty of time to wonder if this was all some kind of elaborate joke. But when the elevator doors opened, Janet from HR was waiting for her with a warm smile. You must be Maria, she said, extending her hand. And this beautiful little girl must be Sophia. Sophia, who had been shy in the elevator, immediately perked up and gave Janet one of her biggest smiles. Some babies just had that effect on people, and Sophia was definitely one of them. Mr. Mitchell is waiting for you in his office, Janet said, leading them down the hallway that Maria had cleaned so many times but never really seen in the daylight. I have to say, I've never seen him so excited about bringing someone new onto the team. Maria's heart was pounding as they walked past offices with floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive artwork on the walls. This was a different world from the night cleaning job she was used to. Mr. Mitchell's office was at the corner of the building, with windows on 2 sides that looked out over the entire city. Maria had dusted these windows dozens of times, but she had never seen the view from inside during the day. Maria, Mr. Mitchell said, standing up from behind his massive desk. He was wearing another expensive suit, but his smile was the same gentle one she remembered from the night before. Thank you for coming. And Sophia, good to see you again, sweetheart. Sophia immediately reached toward him, and Maria was amazed again by how comfortable her daughter seemed with this man. Please, sit down, he said, gesturing to 2 comfortable chairs in front of his desk. I want to show you something before we talk about the job. He walked over to the window and pointed to a corner of the building Maria couldn't see from her chair. Do you see that space down there? It used to be a storage area that we never used for anything. Maria nodded, not sure where this was going. I've had contractors working all night to convert it into something special, he said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. Would you like to see it? They took the elevator down to the 15th floor, and Mr. Mitchell led them to what used to be an empty corner of the building. But when he opened the door, Maria gasped. The room had been completely transformed into the most beautiful childcare center she had ever seen. There were colorful play areas, tiny tables and chairs, shelves full of toys and books, and even a small kitchen area for preparing bottles and snacks. Soft, natural light streamed through the windows, and everything looked safe and welcoming. This is going to be the Pinnacle Industries Family Care Center, Mr. Mitchell said, watching Maria's reaction. We're hiring professional childcare workers, and it will be available to all employees at no cost. Maria stared around the room in amazement. You did all this overnight? I called in a lot of favors, he admitted with a smile. But when you know something is right, you don't wait around to make it happen. Sophia was already trying to crawl toward a set of colorful blocks near one of the play areas, and Maria had to catch her before she escaped. There's more, Mr. Mitchell said. The job I want to offer you is in business development, like I mentioned last night. You'll be working with our team to identify new opportunities for the company. The starting salary is $60,000 a year plus full benefits. Maria felt like she might faint. $60,000 was more money than she had ever dreamed of making. But here's the best part, he continued. I've spoken with the local university, and they have an evening program that's perfect for working parents. The company will pay your full tuition, and you'll have a flexible schedule so you can attend classes. I don't understand why you're doing all this, Maria said, tears starting to form in her eyes. This is too much. It's more than I ever dreamed of. Mr. Mitchell was quiet for a moment, watching Sophia explore the new room with curious eyes. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over, he said finally. I thought I would spend the rest of my years just going through the motions, building a bigger and bigger company but never really living again. He sat down in one of the tiny chairs, looking slightly ridiculous in his expensive suit surrounded by children's toys. Last night, when I saw you risking everything for Sophia, it reminded me of something I had forgotten. It reminded me that the most important thing in life isn't how much money you make or how successful your business is. The most important thing is the people you love, and the lengths you're willing to go to protect them. Sophia had crawled over to where he was sitting and was now trying to pull herself up using his leg for support. He helped her stand up and she clapped her hands with delight at this new accomplishment. Sophia needs someone who will always be in her corner, he said, and I need to remember what it feels like to have someone to fight for. If you'll let me, I'd like us to be a family, not in any official way, but in all the ways that really matter. Maria looked around the beautiful child care center, thought about the job offer and the chance to finish her education, and imagined Sophia growing up with opportunities she never could have provided on her own. But more than that, she looked at this man who had lost everything and found hope again through her daughter, and she realized that sometimes the most unexpected people come into your life at exactly the right moment. Yes, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. Yes to all of it. 3 years later, Maria graduated with her business degree, summa cum laude. Sophia, now almost 4 years old, sat in the front row of the graduation ceremony between her mother and the man she had started calling Uncle Mitchell, but who was really much more like a grandfather. The Pinnacle Industries Family Care Center had become so successful that 5 other companies in the city had started their own programs. Maria had been promoted twice and was now managing her own team. And every Friday evening, the 3 of them had dinner together, just like a real family. Sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments. Sometimes when everything seems impossible, that's exactly when miracles decide to show up. And sometimes when you're brave enough to risk everything for the people you love, the universe finds a way to give you everything you never even dared to dream of. Maria still kept the eviction notice in a frame on her desk, not as a reminder of hard times, but as a reminder that no matter how dark things seem, tomorrow can always bring something beautiful. And every time Sophia laughed in the office daycare or called out, "Hi, Mama," when Maria came to pick her up from work, she remembered that the best decision she ever made was bringing her daughter to work that one terrifying, wonderful night.